Hello, hello, hello. How are y'all doing on this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Wednesday? Winsday. Happy July. Wow, we have officially ended 6 months of 2026. That's kind of crazy, right? Welcome back. Welcome back. Thanks so much for joining. Listen, we are going to be getting into it today. We are going to be talking all about how you are probably closer to your next stream of income than you probably think. That is what we're getting into today. That is what we are going to be talking about today. Listen, there is a voice a lot of you have gotten very good at listening to. Somebody tells a story about a woman who built an extra stream of income from something she had already knew how to do, right? And before the story is even finished, that voice, it pipes up in your head. And you start thinking, yeah, that's good for her, but that's not me. She must have something special going on for her that I don't have, right? And I want to talk about that voice today. I want to talk about that small voice inside of you because right now it's louder in your head than I am talking to you right now. And it's been winning for longer than you'd probably care to admit out loud, right? So here's what I've noticed about that voice. It never shows up to lie to you out of nowhere. It shows up because at some point, agreeing with that voice, it feels safer for you than to test it out. And once you agree with the voice enough times, it stops sounding like an opinion and it starts sounding like a fact that you've always known about yourself. Am I right? And I want you to remember the first time that you clearly heard that voice because most women can remember, they can pinpoint a time where they first heard that voice, right? And sorry about that. Maybe it was the first time that you thought about charging a friend for advice that you normally give away for free. And the thought, it just hit you with a jolt, right? Like you suggested something a little shameful because you're used to giving your knowledge and your skills away for free, and it feels very generous, and now that you're asking for money for it, you have a little bit of shame behind that. Maybe it was watching somebody in your feed launch something and then catching yourself thinking, wow, that must be nice, before you even knew what you meant by that. That reaction wasn't random. It was the voice showing up right on cue, doing the exact job it's been doing for years, which is keeping you exactly where you already are. And I'm not going to spend today shouting that voice down. That's not what this conversation is going to be about. I want to put it on trial. I want to put it on the stand. That's what I want to do. We are going to walk through its lists of arguments. We're going to talk about it one at a time. And by the end of this conversation, I want you to be looking at it the way that you look to a friend who's given you bad advice for years. I don't want you to be angry. I don't want you to be angry about the voice because we all have the voice. I want you just to finally understand and clear and just realize that that voice was wrong the whole time, just like your friend who has been giving you bad advice the whole time. But before you actually opened your eyes, you were believing her, just like you're believing this voice. Welcome back to another episode of Nick at Noon. My name is Nick Scott. I'm the founder and CEO of Her Income Edit. We are an online education platform that is designed to help women turn what they already know into coaching income digital products and online businesses that fit around a full life instead of replacing their full life. If you haven't already, I want you to go get your notebook and your pens. Share this link with your share the link to this video with your biz bestie. Drop the link to this video in the group chat. And before we get into it, I want you to do something for me. I want you to drop the sentence that your voice repeats most often. Is it, I don't have anything special? Is it, nobody would pay me for that? Is it, I'm not the type who does this kind of thing? Whatever it is, I want you to put it in writing, because we are going to take it apart line by line by line. If you can see me and hear me okay, give this video a thumbs up, drop a number 1 in the chat. Let me know that you're rocking with me today. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. We are talking about The Voice, and not the one that's on the, what is that, NBC? Is that what The Voice comes on? We're not talking about that voice. We're talking about that voice that whispers to you in the moment that you're about to do something life-changing for yourself. That voice that usually opens up with something like this: everything you know how to do, other people already know how to do too. There's nothing here worth charging for. Now here's the thing. I want to test it. I want to test that word for word. I don't want us just to take that voice's word for it, right? I want you to pull up a specific memory. So somebody handed you a problem recently and walked away lighter than they arrived. Maybe your sister called in a panic about a decision and got off the phone with a real plan 20 minutes later. Maybe it was a coworker who was stuck on a process for a week and you cleared it up before your coffee even got cold. Maybe it was someone else in your family and y'all have a group chat, like we all have family groups chat. So maybe it was somebody in your family group chat and they asked a question and you answered it so thoroughly that 3 other people, they screenshot it and saved that message. And here's the detail that voice conveniently leaves out of the story. In every one of those moments that I just described, the thing that felt like nothing to you was the exact thing the other person couldn't do for themselves. And that right there is not a small distinction, y'all. It's the whole case against what that voice just told you. It is the whole case against. Remember, I said we were putting this voice on trial today. We were putting this voice on the stand. Easy for you and valuable to somebody else are not opposite things. Most of the time, they're the same fact described from 2 different sides. So think about a nurse. I think about a nurse that I worked with a while back who used to explain discharge instructions to patients twice, once in the clinical language the doctor used and once again in her own words, because she could see people nodding along without understanding a thing that they'd just been told. Have you ever been to the doctor and the nurse or the doctor or the medical assistant or the PA or the whoever it was explaining something to you in that jargon and you're like, and you don't understand anything that they just said to you? So this is how the nurse would explain it. The nurse that I worked with, she would explain it once in the jargon for the medical doctor, and then she would explain it again in laywoman's terms, for lack of a better word, so that the patient can understand. And she did that for years without thinking twice about it, y'all. And it wasn't part of her job description. It was just what happened whenever she noticed, she read the room and she noticed that the patient looked confused. So she would just go ahead and automatically go into this second translation of what she just said to the patient. And when I asked her what she thought that skill was worth, she didn't understand the question, because to her, it wasn't a skill. To her, she was just reading the room. She was just paying attention. Meanwhile, there are entire companies that are built around patient advocacy and health literacy coaching. And they're charging real money for exactly the thing that she'd been doing for free between patients on her lunch breaks. Okay? So the voice will try to argue that that particular situation that I just described is different from yours. Did a voice rise up in you and said, oh, that's not me? The voice is going to try to argue that situation. We are putting this voice on trial today. It always does that though. It'll say that her thing that I just described, it counted because she was in a hospital or because health is serious or some other reason your version doesn't qualify you for, right? And I want you to notice that move. I want you to notice when it happens, because it's the same thing every single time. It is the same move every single time. The voice doesn't have a consistent standard for what it counts. It just moves the goalpost far enough for whatever you've got, where it always lands just outside of the goalpost. So whatever your thing is, the voice is going to keep moving the goalpost so that it hits just before the goalpost. So here is round one. The voice said you have nothing worth charging for. What's closer to the truth is that you have something so familiar to you that you've lost the ability to see it clearly, which is a completely different problem. People don't say, I don't know what I'd have done without you, about things that are nothing to them. That sentence gets said to people who did something real. You've heard it. I mean, you've just heard it so many times that it stopped registering to you as evidence. So here's the thing. We're keeping score here. Round one goes to you. And I want you to keep it because that voice isn't done arguing yet. Because the voice, it changes its story. Here is another thing about that voice. Because losing round one like it just did, it doesn't shut it up. It just moves to a different argument. So now the voice is going to sound something that feels a little bit more mature. The voice is going to say, fine, maybe you're decent at something. Maybe you're good at something, but your job is your safety net. Don't get reckless chasing a side thing when you already have something that's solid. Listen, that part deserves a real answer. That when the voice starts speaking up like that, it deserves an answer because it doesn't sound scared anymore. It sounds responsible. When the voice is telling you this, it sounds very responsible. It's not questioning your ability now. It's questioning your judgment. And here's where I want to push back a little bit, because nobody's telling you to put in your 2-week notice, your 2-week resignation. That was never the trade on the table. That is not what I'm offering here. The question is whether one paycheck, no matter how solid, is that thing supposed to be your entire financial plan by itself? Think about how you treat risk in every other place in your life. You still lock your front door, even if you live in a safe neighborhood. You still keep a spare key with a neighbor, even though you've never once in your entire life locked yourself out of your door, out of your house. So being cautious in a good situation is not contradictory. It's just what we do. It's normal. Everywhere except in the one area that funds your entire life. Here's the deal. Your job can be good. And I hope it is. My job was great. I loved my job. I loved my team. I loved my company. I loved what I did. Your job can be run by people who value you. I felt like I was valued at my company. But here's the thing. You can still be your job, and as much as you're valued, it can still be the single thread that your whole financial picture hangs from. And that is not a knock or a shot at your job. It's literally math, y'all. One thread, it holds until the day that it doesn't. My thread was holding on. It was strong. It was tight. I didn't think that thing was ever going to break. But it broke. Threads hold until it doesn't. And nobody is going to give you any type of notice in the mail or email or phone call or text message or Slack message. Nobody's going to warn you in advance. I think about a friend whose entire department got consolidated into a smaller team after a merger nobody saw coming. At least not the people doing the work. They didn't see it coming, okay? Nothing about her performance changed. The organizational chart did. She kept her job technically, but it was at a lower title and with 2 other people's workloads that were folded into hers for the same exact pay that she was making for the one person doing the one job. Now she's doing 3 people's job for the same pay. Does that sound familiar to you? The version of that year she wishes she had was one where a second income stream was already running in the background. So when she got the demotion, it would have dented her title at the company instead of her whole sense of financial ground. And here's what I want you to notice about this story, because it is part of the story that the voice always skips. This friend of mine whose department shrunk and she took on more work for the same pay, she wasn't reckless. She wasn't gambling on anything. Actually, she did exactly what she was told a good employee does. She put her head down. She trusted the system to hold her up. The merger wasn't a punishment for anything that she did wrong. It was just a decision that was made somewhere else, and it was by people that she never met and that she never will meet in a meeting that she was never going to be invited to. And that's the part that should really make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Because it wasn't her judgment that failed. It was her plan that only had one line item in it, and that was her job. And I want to say this very clearly because I think it needs to be said out loud instead of implied. This isn't me saying that your company is about to do the same thing to you. This is not me saying that your company is about to do the same thing to you. The same thing that happened to my friend or the same thing that happened to me. That's not what I'm saying, because I truly, honestly have no idea, and neither do you. And that's exactly the point. Nobody gets a preview. The only defense against the decision you'll never see coming is not needing that one decision to be the thing holding up your entire life. That is the only defense. Round 2, ding, ding, ding. The voice said staying still is the safe move, right? That's what the voice said, round 2. But what's true is that staying inside one single source was never as safe as it felt. Nobody had tested it yet. That's all, right? So, hello. Thanks for joining. So here's where I want to show you slow all the way down on this, okay? I just want to take a step back because I don't think either of those was ever the real objection. I think they were to really be a cover for something that's a little bit less visible. And if I'm honest, I think the thing that this voice is protecting you from is not failure. I think what this voice is trying to protect you from is being watched while you even try. I want you to think about this. If you never ever put a price on what you know, then you never have to sit it across from someone who says, no, thank you. Thanks, but no thanks. Thank you, next. You never have to post something and then watch it get no likes, no views, no comments. You never have to feel the specific exposed discomfort of asking to be paid for the thing you used to give away for free. You never have to wonder if people are going to read what you're doing as arrogance. Because staying quiet keeps every bit of everything that I just described at arm's length away from you. And I think this fear runs deeper for a lot of you than it would for someone who's never had to prove herself twice as hard just to be taken seriously in a room. I'm going to say that again because I don't want y'all to miss what I just said. I think this fear that I just described, this fear of visibility, this fear of rejection, this fear of, putting something out there and then nobody reacting or responding to it. I think this fear, it runs deeper for a lot of us than it would for someone who's never had to prove themselves twice, 10 times as hard just to be taken seriously in a given room. If you've spent years being careful, if you've spent years being measured, if you've spent years being professional to a fault because one misstep gets read very differently on you than it does on somebody else, then charging for your skills in public isn't just a business decision. It feels like handing people a new way to judge you. And I'm not going to pretend that fear is irrational at all. But I am going to tell you it's a fear worth having and moving through anyway, because the alternative is letting that fear decide your entire financial future without you ever getting a real vote. And I want to be honest about my own version of this story too, because I lived it. I spent years building something on the side of my corporate job, and I told almost nobody. There was some part of me that was hoping someone would notice on their own and tell me it mattered so I wouldn't have to say so myself. But guess what, y'all? Nobody did, because nobody was paying attention as closely as I was. The day it finally moved wasn't the day someone handed me permission. It was the day that I got tired of waiting for that, and I started treating it like it already counted before anybody else agreed with me. And that right there is usually the wall. It's not a missing skill. It is not a missing hour in your week. It is the plain uncomfortable fact that starting means being visible before you feel ready. It means that staying invisible has felt like protection for so long that it stopped feeling like a cost at all. Like, these are real realities. And here's what I want you to really think about instead. The part of you who never lets herself be seen, even trying, also never gets to be seen finishing. There isn't a route on the other side of this that skips the part where people watch you attempt it. You don't get to skip that part. The only choice left is whether or not you're visible on your own terms now, or whether or not you keep waiting for some version of starting that never requires anyone to see you, because guess what? That version is never coming. Like, that part's never coming. Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. So there's a cost the voice never brings up on its own, because it doesn't come with a monthly statement the way a subscription or a bill comes with a monthly payment. And it's the price of everything staying exactly where it is already. What is the cost of that? What is the price of that? Not moving feels like the cautious choice, right? It feels like you're being responsible. Nothing can go sideways, upways, downways, reverse, forward, or back if you never take a step. But the stillness is not neutral, even though it disguises itself that way from the inside. Every month you spend thinking about the same idea, circling the same idea without testing it, is a month that a part of you who could have started already doesn't get back. You don't get that time back. And that gap, it keeps widening, whether or not you're paying attention to it. And here is a comparison that I want you to think about. Two women who more or less have the same skill, more or less have the same doubts, right? So one of them decides to test one single offer this month. It is not perfect, and she's testing it out with one person who is willing to test her offer out with her, and then she adjusts from there. So that's one woman. The other woman, she spends the same amount of time reading about it, saving posts about it. She's waiting for the part of her plan that finally feels polished enough to risk. And then 6 months from now, that first woman who had that not perfect offer and had one willing person to work with her, 6 months from now, the first woman has a track record, a modest track record, but it was earned through doing the thing instead of researching the thing. The second woman, the woman who spent her time reading about it and saving posts, she has a thoroughly researched idea and not much else to show for her time. And both of these women, let's be clear, both of these women put in real effort. They both put in work toward this thing. but only one of them has proof, right? And the difference between them isn't talent. It is which one of these women let herself be seen trying, attempting, moving, building. And I'm not telling you this to make you feel like you're behind, because I don't think you're behind. I don't think you're behind. I'm telling you this because playing it safe and staying exactly where you are, they get filed under the same decision in most people's heads. And they've never been the same thing, y'all. Staying still, it has its own bill. It has its own price. It has its own cost. It just gets delivered later. And it's folded into a year that ends up looking a lot like the year before it. Are y'all picking up what I'm putting down? Show me some love on this beautiful July day, okay? So here's where I want your voice to finally lose this argument once and for all for good, because I think this is the part that changes everything once you receive it, okay? So you've been treating build something like it requires becoming a different person. Like it requires you to be more confident, more certain, like it requires you to be somebody who doesn't feel that flicker of exposure at the thought of charging for your skills the very first time. And I want to offer a smaller ask instead. So fully defeating that voice was never the requirement for starting. So you don't have to fully defeat that voice. The requirement is one piece of evidence that I can't argue its way around. It's one person who says yes. It is one woman who pays you for something you used to hand out for free. It is one result sitting outside your own head where the voice doesn't get to shrink whatever this thing is down to nothing. And that's what coaching really is. Once you strip away the noise built around the word coaching, it's not a personal brand. It is not a following. It is not a laminated certificate. It is being someone who has already crossed the specific stretch another woman is stuck on, and being willing to double back and walk alongside this woman. You've already done that this year. You've probably done it this morning. You've done it for free without ever calling it a business. What about the new hire that you show the ropes to? What about the neighbor you helped rehearse what to say to a contractor who kept giving her the runaround? None of that needs a stage. It needs you. It needs you paying attention. It needs you willing to say the thing that you already know. I think about a woman who spent years managing a new employee onboarding, managing new employee onboarding at a mid-sized company. She had the kind of role that most people would never think to call a business skill. So she built the process new hires could finally follow. She built the process that finally made that confusing first 2 weeks feel manageable instead of chaotic for new employees. So to her, it was just part of her job description, right? It was nothing special. It didn't need a name attached to it. Somebody else, though, would eventually point out to her that small businesses everywhere are drowning trying to onboard new people with zero structure, and there's no small number of them that would happily pay someone who already had that structure figured out. So just like you, this woman didn't need a new skill. She needed one person to point the skill she already had somewhere. It had never occurred to her to really call this thing a skill. And that's the piece the voice has kept from you. It's the evidence that you need to quiet it. It's not years away. It's one specific small action away. And it's a lot smaller than the version that you've been picturing. And I want to talk about one more thing that this voice likes to whisper about, because it's sneaky and it usually shows up dressed up as caution, dressed up as responsible instead of fear. It says, you know what, fine. Maybe you could help someone, but you're not certified. And who are you to charge for this? And here's my honest answer to that. There are certain fields in this industry that 100% require a license or a degree. And I would never tell a woman to skip that step. But most coaching relationships do not run on paperwork. A client deciding whether or not to trust you isn't looking for a certificate on your wall. They're not looking in the background like, does she have a certificate? The person who's looking for you, they are asking a much simpler question, and that is whether or not you've already stood where your next client is standing now, and have you found a way through it? Because if you have, that right there is your credential, and it doesn't come with the cost of framing a certificate. So this voice is going to try one more angle after this. And I want you to be able to recognize it before it gets the chance. The voice is going to tell you that your week is already too full to do any of this. That this idea that keeps surfacing for you is for someone who has more time on her calendar than you have. And here's the thing that I would want you to notice instead. Nobody I've watched build something outside of her 9 to 5 did it by discovering 10 spare hours that nobody else has. The women who do this, they do it by shrinking the first move down until it fit inside of a Tuesday. I'm talking about one conversation and making one offer to one person, whether that's 15 minutes on a Sunday instead of an entire weekend cleared out for a launch. Okay? This thing is not about the size of your week. That's not the thing that decides whether or not this works for you. It is the size of the step that you're willing to take inside of the time that you have. None of us have extra time. We are all busy. Everybody I know is busy. Okay? I'm sure you're busy too. Now, I don't want to leave this abstract. So let's talk about what actually changes once a woman has just one piece of proof outside of her job that she can do this instead of no proof. So what happens is this proof, it shows up the next time you are in a review and tells the truth about an impossible timeline instead of nodding along because you need this job. This proof, it shows up when a fourth packet for a project, it ends up on your desk with no extra support, and you say no without spending the whole week bracing yourself for what that no might cost you. So the proof, it shows up at the kitchen table when we can't right now stops being the automatic answer to every request because there's a second smaller number that is starting to accumulate and starting to compound somewhere now too. And none of what I just talked about requires you walking away from your job. It just requires having one thing that is proving the voice wrong in the background, so that your job stops being the only room that your entire sense of self lives inside of. And there's a much more subtle shift in this too. Women who build even one small stream of income describe how they sleep more peacefully. And let's be clear, the extra money isn't the whole reason, because there's this low hum of tension they stop consciously noticing. It finally gets quiet, and they don't even realize how long they've been carrying that weight until the day that it's gone. And I have also watched something else happen that surprised me the first time that I saw it. The voice doesn't disappear once a woman gets that first piece of proof. It doesn't completely disappear, y'all. It usually shows back up almost immediately with a new complaint. Something like, well, that was just one client. That doesn't count as a real business yet. But here's the difference though. At that point, you're not arguing with that voice from a place of nothing. Now you have proof. So you can argue with the voice or not from a place of a real result that the voice cannot erase, no matter how hard that voice tries to minimize it. The voice will get quieter every single time it loses an argument. But the thing about it is, it really never had a strong shot at winning this argument anyway. And this voice really cannot win against something that has already happened. It can't take that away. It cannot take that win away. It can't take that result away. It can't take that proof away. And that is the version of the voice that has kept you from meeting. It's not a woman with more money sitting in her account. It's a woman who stopped waiting on that voice permission before she moved. Now let's go back to where we started with that voice and its opening claim. And that is the voice telling you that you have nothing worth charging for. Guess what? We found evidence that said otherwise. The voice told you that your job is your only responsible option. Guess what? We found the math in this conversation that said otherwise. And underneath both of those, we found what it was really, that voice was really protecting you from. And that was it's not failure, but it was being watched while you try. It was getting visible. Remember, we had that conversation earlier too. It was the fear of wearing a costume of good judgment. And that's not a fact about you. So there is not a head start that you missed out on. You're not behind. There's no earlier class of women who cracked this before you got the memo. So your skill is not the missing piece. What's been missing is one small piece of proof. And proof is not going to require you to become somebody else. It just requires you to take one action taken by exactly the woman that you already are and where you're already sitting. And here's the only thing that I want from you before the end of this episode. I want you to comment the sentence that your voice repeats most. I want you to, just reiterate the sentence that you talked about at the beginning of this conversation. And then underneath that comment, I want you to comment one specific thing that somebody has already thanked you for this year. And then look at the two side by side. If you're taking notes, you can do this exercise in your notebook or whatever it is that you're taking notes on. So then I want you to put the two side by side, because I think you already know which one of those is telling the truth. Is it the voice or is it the result? Is it the voice or is it the proof? Is it the voice or is it the evidence? Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for joining. Knowing your voice was wrong and knowing exactly how to turn what you have into something sellable are two separate skills. So we talked all about the voice and proving the voice wrong. So hopefully by the end of this conversation, you're feeling a lot more empowered to be able to understand, recognize, and know that that voice is wrong. But knowing that voice is wrong and knowing how to turn what you already know into something sellable are two separate skills. And the space between them is where most women get stuck for a long, long time. A long, long time. They keep going back and forth with the same questions. How do I explain this? What would I even charge? Would anybody say yes? What if somebody says yes? And none of those questions get answered by thinking about them more. They get answered by putting a very small, specific version of your offer in front of a real human, which is exactly the step that most women avoid, because it means being seen before that inner voice that we just spent the last, I don't know, however many minutes talking about, the last 39 minutes talking about. Before that voice has fully signed off on it. And I built 2K in 2 hours because I have watched too many women win the argument in their own head and then stall out anyway. Like, these women have the belief, but what was missing was ever getting walked through the mechanics of turning that belief into something someone could buy. Believing you're worth paying and knowing how to package what you offer, how to price it, and how to put it in front of the right person. Again, those are very different muscles. And only one of them gets built by watching a video like this one. And that right there is the gap that my micro course 2K in 2 hours, that is why it exists. It exists to close that gap. It exists to close that gap in one single focus session, because this micro course, it walks you through finding your one skill that people are already leaning on you for. This course walks you through how to shape it into an offer that someone could say yes to. And this micro course walks you through getting in front of the first woman who needs it, so you leave with proof instead of one more idea that's parked inside of your notes app. So if that voice sounds even just a little quieter than it did when this video started, this is where you build the evidence that keeps quieting that voice further. And you can find out and learn more about 2K in 2 hours on my website at herincomeedit.com/2K, or you can just click the link down in the description. Listen, you won the argument today. You won the argument with the voice today. Now I want you to go get the proof, okay? I hope y'all found this one helpful, because we all have that voice. We all have those voices that try to talk us out of doing something that we know we should be doing, okay? Thanks each and every one of you who popped in and out of today's conversation. I see the love on YouTube. Thanks so much. Your presence did not go unnoticed. My name is Nick Scott. This has been another episode of Nick at Noon. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on YouTube and turn your notifications on so you don't miss a beat. Listen, today is the start of a very, very exciting project that I am launching in my business. I am doing a 100-day video sprint right here on YouTube. So for the next 100 days, starting today, I will be posting one video a day. One video a day. If you are on my email list, you already know the full background and why I'm doing it and what I am hoping to expect to get from it. But here's the thing, that I had the voice telling me, like, why would you do that? Nobody's gonna watch. You know, this is not the content that your audience is used to you putting out into the world. Like, I had the voice the whole time leading up until today. I have had the voice. But guess what? We are going to be moving anyway. This is the most visible. I've never done anything like this before. So this is the most visible that I have ever been in my business. This is the most visible that I will have ever been in my career. Like, I've never done anything like this before. So I don't want you to miss it. I have a lot of good content planned for you, a lot of good strategy videos coming out, a lot of good frameworks that I've been working on that I'm going to introduce you to in this content. Oh, and also I have a new live training that's coming up on Tuesday. Every single Tuesday, I'll be going live and teaching about skills-based income streams, about why coaching is the most accessible income stream for women. I'm going to be talking about how you can find your monetizable skill. So if that is something that you're interested in and you want to learn more about, head over to my website at herincomeedit.com/training and sign up for the training. Yes, sign up for the training, all right? Thanks so much for rocking with me. Again, you can learn more about 2K in 2 hours again on my website, herincomeedit.com/2K. Thanks so much for joining, and I will not be here Friday. Hopefully you'll be taking the day off too. So I will see y'all next week. Have a wonderful